You're listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 146th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays. Alongside of me, co-host J-Raff.
Yeah, we're kind of halfway through these preseason kind of NFL talks. I'm excited. Football starts. I actually watched at least the fourth quarter of the Sam Houston State Eastern Washington game yesterday.
That was a good game, I'm guessing.
Yeah. It was at Eastern Washington on the bright red turf.
Nice.
But
I wanted that at Gursky.
It actually wasn't that bad of a game. I was kind of exciting to see. And I was glad to see. Football back on, and I'm excited to kind of get into football that's more in our wheelhouse, with some of the teams that we actually root for starting this weekend coming up. So should be exciting, even though those aren't necessarily the teams that will dominate our talk tonight. I'm excited and ready for that.
Yeah, we're on, week 3 of our NFL preview. We did the West 2 divisions 2 weeks ago. Last week we did the South 2 divisions. Today we're doing the North 2 divisions. We're starting to get a little bit closer to our area of expertise as we're more accustomed to talking about the teams, especially in the AFC North, as well as both the AFC and NFC East. The East will be next week. So today, AFC, NFC North will dominate the conversation. But before we do that, a little bit more football talk, just kind of just a few minutes here to mention scholastic football in the area is kicking up. We're actually into the first week of the regular season, technically starting tonight, at least based on what Wilson does. Tonight was the first night of films for the squad, watching probably the recap of the scrimmage against Springford Friday night at home. That was their second scrimmage. They scrimmaged Parkland the previous Saturday. This week is build up to not only the first week of the season, but Wilson's first huge game, and which would be against rival Governor Mifflin. And while both teams, unfortunately, don't get to meet the last week of the season, which is preferable since Governor Mifflin a few seasons ago left the Lancaster-Lebanon League for the Berks IC League, we do get to schedule them as a non-conference game, non-league game, and we play them in week 1. And I know some college teams do that, big rivalry games in the first week. I prefer it to be the last week, but you can't.
Yeah, that's how it was when we were in school. And
yeah.
That was always fun.
Always incredible.
With it being a non-league game, that's virtually impossible now.
Yeah. You'd have to get the entire league to agree to play one non-league contest at the end of the year, essentially.
Yeah.
Both leagues would have to do it, too. Berks IC and LL, and then you'd also have to have other league,
Right.
It just doesn't work out.
It would be a big mess, right.
Either Wilson would have to move to the Berks, which I don't see happening.
And on the other hand, they have played a few times over the last decade or so. They have played a
playoffs.
number of games twice a year, and for one of the teams, it being their last game.
Yeah. Most recently, it was 2012 when Wilson started the season at home against Mifflin at Gursky. They won that game. Then the day after Thanksgiving, hosted Mifflin again in the district playoffs and beat Mifflin again.
Right.
The
last game at Gursky, I believe, right?
The last game at the old Gursky before the renovations, yes. And that Wilson team went on to beat Harrisburg the next week in a bit of a revenge game from earlier in the season where they lost to Harrisburg the week after playing Mifflin. This time when they beat Mifflin, they beat Harrisburg, won district gold, and were in the Final Four in the state. They lost to a North Allegheny team that won the state title and was absolutely a juggernaut.
Maybe I'd seen them week 1.
One of the best teams you've ever seen, I'm guessing.
In all seriousness, with colors and everything, black and gold or black and yellow, if you would have told me you were running out like Millersville or like a college team out there, I would have bought it. Like, just monsters across everything. One of the best high school football teams I've ever seen. Maybe the best I've ever seen in person, and one of the best I've seen. But anyway, yeah, Scholastic football kicks up this week. Big Wilson Mifflin game. So that should be exciting and kind of jump right into the season. And
the Reading Eagle got it started today, I believe, with their Scholastic football preview. They also had their college football preview, which featured prominently Penn State and especially Coach James Franklin. But the Scholastic preview, I'm sure the people in Berks County were loving it because they already think that the Reading Eagle only covers Wilson. Now, they threw Mifflin in this year. Not just because of the rivalry. It's probably, I mean, obviously we're biased, but probably the biggest football rivalry in the county is Wilson Mifflin.
Oh, yeah.
Has been for a number of years. They're both featured on the front page of the 2014 Scholastic Preview, and it says, "Rivals unrivaled, dominant Wilson, Governor Mifflin programs in a league of their own." And it's completely true. I think Mifflin's seeking their 5th straight Berks IC Section 1 title and 7th in the last 10 years or something like that.
And to be fair, when Mifflin made the move, the Berks IC was not strong at all, in my opinion. It was rather weak. Since then, in the last couple years, it has really grown. The number of playoff wins from Berks teams, kind of across all sizes, has drastically increased, which shows that football is rising across the county,
which is a great thing. Absolutely.
Good. So even though they're in different leagues, both have dominated their league for the last half decade or so, especially their sections.
Right, and Wilson, entering the 2014 season, has won 6 straight Lancaster-Lebanon Section 1 titles. They've won 43 consecutive Lancaster-Lebanon Section 1 games. It's really unprecedented. They've had 6 straight seasons with 10 or more wins. That had never happened in Berks County football history. And I think I read in the paper
just
today.
For those who aren't quite aware, you said 6 straight 10 or more win seasons.
Yes.
A regular season in high school football is only 10 games.
Or only 10 games.
Right. I think Coach Doms is averaging like 11 and a half wins
11 and a half, yeah.
per
I crunched
year.
them numbers. This is his 9th season.
Which
he's
is hard to
something
believe,
like he's something ridiculous, like 95 and 13 or something like that. 95 wins in 8 seasons.
Yeah, in a 10-game season.
In a 10-game regular season. So, yeah, the numbers are a little incredible. But that's what's happening scholastically. Big game this Friday night, August 29th, at Gursky Stadium in West Lawn. Mifflin will come here to play the Bulldogs in the season opener for both squads. Both have big hopes for this season. This game doesn't mean all that much in the long run because it's only one game. I mean, you'd like to win it quad A power points. It's week 1.
It may help determine some seeding later on, but in reality, either one of the teams, when they win, I won't say they're rooting for the other team, but they need that other team to win.
Right, you need them to keep winning. So,
right,
yes.
So basically, the winner of this game wants to go 10-0, and the loser
you want the loser to go 9-1.
You want them to go 9-1.
Yes,
because it
only helps
power
you
rankings.
in the long
it only
run.
helps you. Right?
Yeah, and Wilson has quite the daunting non-league slate this year. Whereas last year, now at first it looked okay because Harrisburg was coming up the district title run, losing only to Wilson in that game. So you had the Mifflin game, you had the Harrisburg game, and then Reading, who hasn't been good for a number of years. But then Wilson kind of bulldozed through everyone off to a 12-0 start before falling in a nail-biter to Lower Dauphin, who won the district title. Now this year you start with Mifflin, who again is supposed to be good just like they were last year. Then you host Central Dauphin East, which isn't historically a dominant program. They're the little brother to Central Dauphin, who we'll get to in a second. But they returned something like 18 starters from a team that upset Mifflin in the playoffs.
They had a rough start last year, I believe, but they hit their stride and then finished the year strong.
I think
they upset Central Dauphin in the last week of the season, which turned over some of the rankings that people weren't anticipating. They're always trying to project what those rankings will be, and in the playoffs, it kind of upset some of those things there. Yeah, and like you said, set up an unfortunate matchup for Mifflin hitting a team who was hitting their stride in the first week of the playoffs.
So Wilson hosts Mifflin, CD East, and then they have to travel to play that big brother of CD East, Central Dauphin, who Wilson's had their problems with over the years.
Yep.
My senior year we lost to them. 3 years ago, Wilson lost to them in the district title game as well.
A power.
They're a power. I mean, they're one of those strong mid-pen teams. They're always very good. I know I'm running the Bulldogs Twitter account. I get to interact with anyone and everyone on there, and I've had a lot of Central Dauphin people say how excited they are for Week 3 to see that game. So we got big things in Wilson football coming up. That starts this Friday. Again, you can follow their games on Twitter at Wilson Bulldogs. I'll send out the game updates and pictures for you if you can't be there in person. All right, so to the professional side of things now. We're going to be talking AFC and NFC North. If you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, there's a couple of ways that you can do that, and Justin has that information for you.
Yeah, we'd love to have your take on any of the topics, any of the teams or either of the divisions we're going to talk about tonight. You can call the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop hotline at 530-563-6297. Again, 530-563-6297. You can also email the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. Again, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. And we're also all over social media, and Joey will tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, we have those up during the show. You can like our fan page on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Joe Mays and J-Raff. Again, they're up during the show, so if those are the ways you'd like to contact us, definitely go ahead and do that. Usually the easiest way is the email inbox, though, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. But we will take your phone calls if you can get through, if we get reception down here in the studio. We'd love to put you on.
The think tank.
Right, exactly. So, professional football, week 3 of the preview. North divisions now. We're going to start on the NFC side, finish up with the AFC. And I think that we'll start at the bottom like we have been the last few weeks. So NFC North is a historical division, one that's steeped with a long pedigree of championships and historical figures and stadiums. Do you think it's wide open, or is there a definite favorite?
This is kind of going against some of the reasoning I use in other divisions, some of which we'll get to next week, and some of which this division last year. Last year, I believe I went with the argument of Packers until I see otherwise. Not so sure about the top. We'll get there. I think it's close again, kind of like it was the last few years, where it's been pretty close and competitive. Not necessarily the best teams in football, but very competitive. It's a fun one to watch and kind of see the games that are going on here. An interesting twist in this division is Minnesota is not playing in a dome this year. They're playing outside at the University of Minnesota at their stadium, so outdoor games in Minnesota.
Right.
Good luck with that. Well, I say that. Green Bay isn't that much worse, I don't think. It's got to be roughly the same. You're going to get some games where it's just unbearably cold. I think it's going to be pretty close this year. But if I have to go with my 4th place team, I think I'm going to go with the Vikings. I'm going to put them at close to 7 wins, though. I think it's a good division. Again, I'm not sure there's any teams that are the best in football, but I don't think there's any teams that are going to be drafting in the top 8 or so either. I think unless the wheels completely fall off one of these teams, I think the Vikings are headed in the right direction. I like Teddy Bridgewater. I know there are some negatives on him, in terms of, will he be able to play in the cold, because he wore a glove at his pro day.
Louisville.
Right. Those are legitimate concerns. You know what's great when you're not sure if your quarterback's great in the cold? The second best running back in the league. or the best. Adrian Peterson. I think that's a big part of their offense, but I think having some passing attack, I think changing coaching there, while that kind of rocked the cart a little bit because some of the players didn't think Leslie Frazier should lose his job. I think you'll see a little bit bounce back. Who they hired, was it Jim Caldwell? Was he there now?
In Minnesota?
Right, I don't remember who's there.
No, it's Zimmer.
Okay, so it's Zimmer. I think that'll help overall. I just don't think they have what it takes to jump over some of the other teams. They're unsettled at quarterback, even though they think obviously that Bridgewater is the next guy. Adrian Peterson has had injury issues off and on throughout his career. How long will that last? How long will a running back? Running backs usually drop off pretty quick. I'm not sure they have the explosive guys. They have guys that if they can get them the ball, it'll be helpful. Defense has been hit or miss at times too the last couple of years, even though they've had a lot of talent. I think the change in coaching staff will help in that sense. But I'm still going to put them at 7 wins and in 4th place.
I agree with you. I think the Vikings are the fourth best team in that league. I also agree. I think they'll be better, albeit just a little. They were 5-10-1 last year. I have them at about 6-10. So
they lost a lot of close games last year, didn't they?
They did.
Were they the team that was like, if games were 59 minutes long, they would have won like 5 of the games they lost, or something absurd?
Well, they lost by 10 to the Lions, but then they lost by 1 to the Bears. They lost by 4 to the Browns. They got beat up by the Panthers and the Giants. Right. 4 to the Cowboys. Tied the Packers. Close game against Baltimore. They were a handful of close games. They also won a couple close games as well. So I think at their best they're a 500 team. At their worst, they're probably a 4-win team.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I think you go somewhere in the middle. I'd say 6-10, so a smidgen better than last year. But especially if Bridgewater ended up getting meaningful playing time, that's got to be seen as a step in the right direction. Right. As long as they don't fall off and win 2 or 3 games.
If you play a rookie quarterback and you improve your win total at all, it's got to be a victory. And I know not all the fans will view it that way, especially if they come in last in the division, but overall it really is. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out.
I think the division, like you mentioned, honestly, I see it being similar to last year. Last year, an 8-win team won the division in the Packers. Now, obviously, they are better than an 8-win team because Aaron Rodgers missed a substantial amount of time. But I actually think the Packers, Bears, Lions, Vikings are all within a few wins of each other, just like last year. 8-7-1, 8-8, 7-9, 5-10-1. If the Vikings go 6-10, I'm guessing the third place team is probably 7-9.
Right.
And I'm actually going to say, I'll just go, my third place team is the Lions again, same place as last year, have them at 7-9.
Yeah, I can agree with that. The Lions might be the most perplexing team in football, let alone in this division. I really don't know. It seemed like they were hitting their stride, and then I think one of the things that happened, we talked about, is this the case? Are we going to see this in San Francisco, where the voice of intensity that the players kind of rally around early on, but get sick of? In Jim Schwartz, was that the case? Because if so, replacing him and bringing in new coaching staff and surrounding them with talent. There's talent there.
Oh, absolutely.
Who knows? You might see like a team that really puts together a good spin there, a good year. I'm actually.
Well, now let's look at their schedule.
This is crazy. But you know what? You went out on a limb in the first week.
Uh-oh, I know what's coming.
Here we go. I'm going Packers in third place at 8 or 9 wins.
That's interesting you say that, because I was contemplating who I wanted to put in third, and it was the Lions or the Packers.
I'm going to go 8 or 9 wins and Packers in third place. I'm leaning more towards 9 wins. Not saying that the others, I'll get to the win projections. Again, we don't add them up like some people do.
No, yeah, I think you have to get to 256,
and because we're giving a range, that's fine. But I'm going to say 8 to 9 wins. I think offensively, they're solid. But I question anymore after, especially some of the things you saw last year. And we always talk about trying not to overreact. But you need to be more than just a passing offense. Like, passing offense is a huge part of the game. You need to be able to pass the ball to win in the NFL now. But to me, that's what the Packers do best. And I say that. Eddie Lacy is on my fantasy team. He's one of my keepers. I hope they can run the ball well. But their defense was awful. And it has been for a few years. And they keep saying, oh, well, they replaced this guy and this guy. Well, yeah, but they were terrible and you replaced them with a mediocre guy. I'm not impressed.
Are you any better?
Right. I'm just not sold that they're going to be able to outscore enough teams to get to more than 9 wins. So I'm going to put them at 8 or 9 wins and the third place team, the Packers.
Going back to the Lions for a second, they were 7-5 after a beatdown of the Packers in Week 13. They're rolling. You were thinking, okay,
I love where this is going, by the way.
The Lions are here. Here we go. they went to Philadelphia in a game that you were at in a professional version of the Snow Bowl.
It was unbelievable.
And they lost. I mean, Philly was a good team. It's whatever. It was on the road.
And Philly had been hitting their stride.
In snowstorm. Philly was getting better. They lose by 2 touchdowns, whatever. Then they come home for 2 games and lose 2 close games to the Ravens and Giants.
To non-playoff teams.
Neither of them went to the playoffs. And then with playoffs on the line, because remember, they went 7-9. The Packers made it 8-7-1. Okay, if you go 8-8, you would have had other things happen, but you would have still been in contention. They lose to division rival Minnesota by a point.
Right.
So instead of finishing at 500, they go to 7-9, miss the playoffs. Jim Schwartz loses his job. Hello, Jim Caldwell. We're in 2014. I think they match what they did last year. I mean, I think that would still be underachieving based on the talent they have, but they have to show it to me again like a couple years ago when Schwartz had them at 10 wins or whatever. I need more from the Lions. So they're my third-place team at probably about 7-9, 1 win ahead of the fourth-place Vikings.
I don't really know that it'll be a huge bump. I just think the changing coaching staff there, with the talent they have on offense, I think Jim Caldwell is a great hire there. I think it's a great hire. I really like them. The Lions, I say I really like them. I'm going to peg them for 9 wins and put them in second place.
The Lions.
The Lions. So I have the Lions in second place.
So if they tie with the Packers, they get the tiebreaker.
I agree with many of the things you say. But, yeah, I'm going to put them at 9. I would think I'd give them the tiebreaker over the Packers. I just think, in all honesty, if I look at it from a talent perspective, with everyone healthy, offensively, you could make the argument push, or even Packers in a slight edge. I'll give you that. I think defensively, Detroit has more pieces. Now, whether they can put them together and get them from getting suspended for games and things like that, who knows?
Yeah.
But talent-wise, they're, in my opinion, much better than the Packers on defense. So that's why I just have them switch. I say I have them switched. You haven't given your second place team.
Well,
but I'm going 9 wins for Detroit in second place. But I agree with a lot of things you said. I put the Packers.
I mentioned I was down to Detroit or Green Bay for my third place spot. So obviously I'm going to have Green Bay in second place, and I'm going to have them right about where you had 8-9 wins. So I had 6-10 Vikings, 7-9 Lions.
I thought I was going out on a limb.
8-9 wins with the Packers. I just, even with Rodgers back, if he stays healthy, that's great. They're having a lot of injuries. Their center just went down for missed most of the season.
Wide receivers have been getting hurt all the time. Their offensive line has been terrible the last couple of years.
Exactly. And you mentioned their defense is god-awful. They lost B.J. Raji now for the entire year.
Right.
He tore his bicep. He's
Arguably
done.
their best defender.
Quite possibly.
Or at least their most impactful defender.
You never know what's going to happen with Clay Matthews and what's going on with their other guys they've drafted over the years. They've just had issues finding the right guys defensively. And eventually age catches up with you now. And fortunately for them, they finally figured out the running back position. But now, is it too late for Aaron Rodgers? He's 30 now. It's not the same as a running back position. He was injured last year. He started 9 games in the regular season. What's going on? I think, just like I mentioned with San Francisco, I think maybe we'll see a step back for Green Bay. A couple of these teams, I think, are missing their windows of opportunity. Now, the Packers won a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, so we can't exactly miss too much if you won a ring. But to get another one, I think it might be starting to shut the door on Green Bay's version of the Packers, which my father probably doesn't want to hear, because if the Packers aren't doing well, Rodgers might not be doing well in fantasy, and I know that was his excuse last year for why they didn't make the playoffs in our fantasy league.
You know what? And I have nothing against the Packers. I don't really care all that much. I liked watching the North games, the NFC North games, but I just, like you said, and I feel not the only reason, but one of the reasons I have so much hesitation is because last year I said, until someone shows me otherwise, I'm going to pick the Packers. Basically that was...
No one showed you otherwise.
Right. Well, and I know Aaron Rodgers got hurt, but they went 8-8. You shouldn't win the division when you're 8-8.
Right.
But no one else in the division had really shown that ability. However, the steps that the team that I have left, to pick in this division, the steps that they made last year, I really was impressed. And I think they're going to continue to get better. Some of the pieces they have offensively, I think they are the most talented team in the division on offense.
I agree. That's why I have the Bears at number 1. I think this could be an absolutely massive year for Jay Cutler. Now, I know, like Aaron Rodgers, he's also 30, starting, maybe eventually going down that road. Usually you can get it well into up to 34, though, as a quarterback, because you're not taking the beating like a running back. And we see what Manning and Brady and those guys are doing.
All of a sudden, I like those former Vandy guys.
And what the chemistry he has with Marshall is just incredible. Marshall couldn't do anything without him, but look what he's doing with him. Alshon Jeffrey burst onto the scene last year. They brought in Santonio Holmes. They have Martellus Bennett at tight end. They have Matt Forte.
Santonio Holmes, who, unlike when he was at the Jets and really the only legit receiver, now he's like number 3 at best on the Bears, playing slot essentially. I imagine. It depends where they line him up, but I think Santonio Holmes could have a good year, because he's going to get some much more favorable matchups in Chicago than he did under Trestman. Wait, okay, so, sorry, this just popped into my head. He's going from being the other guy that teams now have to defend under an offensive guru, in theory, and coming from Rex Ryan run offense with Geno Smith as your quarterback and Mark Sanchez as your quarterback in New York, where he was the number 1 guy and getting all the attention. I think Santonio Holmes could have a good year.
Now, the problem when Cutler came over 5-6 years ago to the Bears was their line. If they fix that problem,
and it's still
that offense will
mark.
Be very good. Cutler to Marshall, Jeffrey, Holmes with Forte in the backfield, Bennett at tight end. It's a potent offense as long as your line is fixed. Their defense, it was always one of the best. It dropped down the last couple of seasons. They got to start bringing it back up. They've made some draft additions, and they let go of a few guys that probably needed to move on. And maybe they're not going to be a top 5, top 10 unit, but as long as you're above average with that kind of offense that should produce, I think Chicago's the best team in the
Bears
North.
have been known for their defense, I'm not sure they have I'm not saying they have the best defense in the league, or not in the league, no, in the division, but if you have the best offense, you don't necessarily need the best defense. You need a capable defense. And I think they have a capable defense. And I really like, this is crazy for me to say, I really like what Jay Cutler did last year.
Oh, yeah.
And with those weapons,
he missed 5 games, and he was only 5-6 as a starter.
But I just, they were able to put up some big points. I think they make a stride under Trestman this year. I'm going with the Bears. That's my out on a limb pick. Though we're kind of in agreement.
I say 10-6.
Yeah, I'm putting them at 10 wins. I'm not putting them above. So I have them grouped there. 7, 8, or 9.
I have 10, 8, or 9, 7, and 6. So just like last year, maybe a win better for everyone. Shuffle at the top a bit. I think the Bears are the team to beat in that division, and we both seem to be in agreement on that.
Right.
All right, over to the AFC now, in a division that we're very, very familiar with, as we have friends and family that are fans of the Steelers and Ravens. But obviously, with them having huge rivalries with both Ohio teams, we're familiar with them as well. And we're going to start at the bottom. I would probably ask to bring in our good friend Joe for this. But honestly, unfortunately, I'm going to turn to my family out in Pittsburgh because I think this is going to be a bad year for the Steelers.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if you heard me earlier. I was telling someone the last time the Steelers' defense was as bad as they were last year, they went to the Super Bowl the next year and had, I think, the number 1 yards defense and number 2 scoring defense in the league. That might be switched. That being said, I see a lot of people are like kind of high on the Steelers this year. I don't really know where that's coming from. I think they have some pieces at linebacker to start rebuilding the defense. The secondary is still awful. And that's been the problem for a number of years. I know they let Ryan Clark go. In my opinion, he wasn't the biggest problem back there. I think one of the big problems is they and the fan base out there, maybe not the fan base, but it seems like some experts and people are in love with some corners out there that I just have never really been that impressed with. That being said, as much as I would love to do that, I think they're still good enough
to be better than the Browns. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much what I'm saying.
So you're going to disappoint Joe once again.
This is terrible because I'm ripping a number of teams in my next statement. But when you're like, man, our team was awful last year. Let's hire the Bills coach. Like, seriously.
Or a coach from the Bills.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have clarified. And he did well last year. The defense for the Bills wasn't god awful. But that being said, I think that the Browns, even if they're better than last year, I think the Steelers are still better. I'm going to put them at 7 wins. However, 7 wins, Tomlin's got to look out because...
You're going to have Pittsburgh at 3rd with 7 wins?
Yeah, I'm going to put Pittsburgh at 3rd.
So Cleveland's in 4th at what?
4th at... I'll put them 6 wins.
All right, see, I'm pretty close together. Last year, Cleveland was 4-12, while Pittsburgh was 8-8. The Steelers were inches from making the playoffs because they finished down the stretch at 6-2. Maybe a lot of people are thinking that optimism. I think the Steelers could push up into 2nd place. I don't think they're good enough to challenge for a division, but like you said last time, they were bad. They ended up being really good. And maybe it's a shock that after finishing last year at 6-2 in those final 8 games, with a loss to my Dolphins in there, that I would pick them to be last in the division. Do I think the division is going to be great on whole? No, I think it's going to be another division that's within 3-4 games of each other. I don't know. You kind of make fun of the Browns coach coming from the Bills, hiring him. But I don't necessarily. It's not always a coaching issue. The Browns front office and ownership is a mess.
You're right. You're absolutely
and I think
right.
The last 2 regimes have found some decent players that I think the Browns are getting better. Now, they have the quarterback interest because of Manziel being there. They've named Hoyer the starter.
But yeah, and I think that's the right call. But I don't know. When I look at it, I'm like, Hoyer played well last year in both games that he played.
Right.
Like, that's where I come. I'm just not sold on Hoyer. If I had to rank the starting quarterbacks in the division, Hoyer is by far 4th. And to me, the defense for the Browns, I think, is good. I'm interested. I thought they were good last year, and they're in a different system now. I know, is it Petin or Petin or
yeah, however you say it, I honestly don't know. I've heard it said both ways.
The Bills were solid last year, but that wasn't broke for the Browns. So I don't, it's the other side of the ball where they haven't been able to do anything for a couple decades.
I think that I'm going to have the Steelers in 4th place. I'm going to drop them to 5-11.
Okay.
I know it sounds crazy. It's just one, and I hate to do it. I hate to do it.
Smack the table.
But I don't know. I have a bad feeling about Pittsburgh. I know don't take much about preseason stuff, but they haven't looked good.
Yeah, but if there is 1 week where you take some note of preseason, it's week 3, and that might be the week they look the worst.
Right. So I just don't have a good feeling about the Steelers. Thankfully, the Pirates are keeping it interesting out there. That'll make them forget through September. Now, once October comes, who knows what'll happen. But I don't know. I have the Steelers 5-6 wins.
Five wins and Mike Tomlin's 5.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think anything less than... I think he has to make the playoffs, because what have they done recently?
I think if they're above 500... and they don't if they win 9 games but don't make the playoffs, I think he's still safe, even though some people will be calling for his job.
Only because it's Pittsburgh and they have loyalty to their coaching staff.
By that I mean the Rooneys. No one else out there. Like, Pittsburgh gets credit for all this loyalty. No.
Right, no.
People are calling...
It's the team.
I know. It's Rooneys in the organization are one of the best organizations in all of sports. And that's why I think 9 wins... keeps his job. 8 wins, you'll have to look at some of the outlying circumstances, but back-to-back 500 years isn't good enough in Pittsburgh.
No, you're right.
And then if you get, if you see things like, well, I'm just not. I think they'll score on offense, but there's been issues there on offense for a few years now.
They lost Emmanuel Sanders.
What's going on? You make some good points.
Isaac Redmond is tired.
You know what else it comes down to? If I pick the Steelers to win 5 games, they'll win 15, including the Super Bowl. That's basically what it comes down to. So I'm still going with the Browns. I think while they may be moving in the right direction, and I did make fun of the coaching selection, but if they move in the right direction, I think they can start to build. Jimmy Haslam's the owner there. I have no confidence that he will, be the guy to be the beacon of stability. They're like the opposite of the Browns there. So I'm not even sure. Like if they win 6 games, he might fire the coach again. Like I don't know. It's just awful. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm gonna put the Browns in 3rd place.
4th place.
Yeah, sorry. I'm putting the Browns in 4th place.
We're flip-flopping
at
3rd
6
and 4th.
wins. I'm putting the Steelers around 7 wins and maybe 8. Actually, I'll put them at 8 wins. I'll put the Steelers at 8 wins, 500 again. I see a high as being like 9 games, but I could see a low being where you're at. Like, if the things go bad for them, it's going to get bad in a hurry. I kind of feel like they're not quite like the Phillies going into this season, but in that situation where they have a very thin margin of error, and an injury or two on offense, and that could be it for them.
So I have the Steelers 5-11, 6-10. I'm gonna say the Browns at 7-9.
That'd be a nice jump for them.
Yeah, they were good. I think they were 4-12 last year.
Who's the quarterback at the end of the year there?
If they go 7-9, I think it is Brian Hoyer. I believe that 3rd place team is going to be the Ravens. I think they'll rebound a tiny bit. I still don't like anything, there to make me think that they can make a Super Bowl run again. I don't think they even make the playoffs. I'm going to have them at 8-9 wins and in 3rd place. I don't have much else to add about the Ravens because I think they're just there. They're just a team right now. They're not terrible, but they're not great. They're not good enough to do too much. And Flacco's just Flacco. Like, he was the guy that we knew and loved and bashed all the time last year. What did he do after winning a Super Bowl? Nothing. The Ravens were nothing last year. And I don't see them getting that much better. I don't see them getting that much worse. I think they're just there right now. Now they'll go out and, like you said about the Steelers, they'll go out and win 15 games and win the Super Bowl.
I hope they do.
Whatever. Actually,
I don't really hope they win the Super Bowl, but I hope they do well. I like the Ravens.
So I have them in 2nd place, 8 or 9 wins, and obviously then my top team, as they have been for a number of years now. I've been on this bandwagon for a while. I'm going to go with the Bengals. Now, I haven't said they were going to win the Super Bowl, but I thought they were the best team in the division. I'd like to see them win a playoff game here. Now, I think it's 3 straight years that they've lost in the first round, or their first game in the playoffs they've lost. So, they put their faith in Andy Dalton with that extension. A.J. Green's going to be coming up. They have quite the offense with Bernard there and the 2 tight end sets with Gresham and Eifert. They've got backs too besides Bernard. They still have the law firm Green Ellis, and they drafted Jeremy Hill. They have talent there on offense, and their defense had been underrated for a while and is very, very good. Geno Atkins will be back at full strength. Now they lost Michael Johnson, but they had depth. One of our favorites, Devin Still from Penn State, who unfortunately we found out his daughter was diagnosed with pediatric cancer. But being a Penn Stater, he's well aware of the support that his family will be getting from that. But the Bengals, I think it's their division to lose. I think they're easily a 10-win team, if not more. I'd probably say closer to 11.
See, I'd love to pick the Ravens to win the division, but I just can't do it. I'm going to put them in 2nd place. I'm going to put them at 9 wins. I think they can get to 10 wins. I think they can compete for a playoff spot. And I just kind of need to see more from them, as in... I just don't... I'm so unsure about them. Are they the team from a couple years ago where Ray Rice was running the ball really well? They were more of a power offense and could pass over the top, and then their defense was really good? Or are they the team last year that tries to give it all to Joe Flacco and ignores their good running backs and their good running games and then gets in trouble? That's kind of how I feel. And part of that because their defense was still solid last year, but not Super Bowl caliber like they had been. I'm unsure. I think they're still like a 9 or 10 win team, though. I will say 9. I'll kind of probably root for 10 and getting in the playoffs. And the Ravens, they're a team, if they make the playoffs, I think they could be a bad matchup for a lot of teams, because if they make the playoffs, that means their defense is playing really well. In my opinion, that's the only way they make the playoffs, is if their defense returns to top 10 form and the offense is that their rush offense is top 10. Those would be the stipulations I put on them being playoff caliber again, which leaves the Bengals. I'm in agreement. The Bengals, I would say, are the best team. Playoffs aside, I think, like you said, and we used this argument for the Bears in the NFC North, talent-wise, they're incredible. They've got arguably the most talent on offense in the division, and you could argue they have the most talent on defense in the division. But even if not, even if they're middle of the pack on defense, if their offense is really good, it'll be interesting to see how Andy Dalton does.
I think
if it starts to go bad after you sign that huge contract, people will just start ripping him.
He'll essentially be a more expensive Matt Schaub is what it'll turn into. Houston was like that for a while. This is a make or break year for the Bengals, where I don't think they obviously have to make the Super Bowl, but I think they have to win a playoff game. You have to win the division, win 10 to 12 games, win the division, win a playoff game. That's what has to happen.
I'm going to put them at 12 wins because I think they need 12 wins. I think they could really benefit from a bye, even though that gives you, in theory, a harder matchup in the playoffs.
I think 11 for them, which is what they got last year. So we're pretty close in agreement. We think it'll be Bengals, Ravens, but I maybe shocked some people and went with Browns, Steelers, whereas you went with Steelers, Browns. So that's the AFC North. I think the only other thing that I want to mention is about my St. Louis Rams pick from a couple weeks ago. I had to maybe shock the people when I picked the Rams to win the NFC West over the defending Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. Had the 49ers in third. The 49ers pick's actually not looking too bad. They're having major issues out there, including on the offense. But the Rams today lost Sam Bradford for the season again, tearing, I think, his other ACL.
No,
is it the same ACL?
One.
Okay.
Same one.
So he tore. They first said last night it wasn't the ACL, and that's what I told I think my uncle today when they drafted him in our fantasy draft.
You were full of good information for the draft.
I remember a couple years ago when Peyton Manning was ruled out. That happened literally like an hour after our draft ended.
Right.
We found out, and Nick had him. This year, now Sam Bradford was his backup quarterback, so it's not a huge deal. He has Andrew Luck as a starter, but like an hour after the draft ended, we find out that Sam Bradford did re-tear his ACL. He's lost for the year. Now everyone's talking about how 15 years ago Trent Green tore his ACL, was lost for the season, and they were like, well, there goes the Rams' chances of doing anything. And then some guy by the name of Kurt Warner came onto the scene, started the greatest show of turf.
You may have heard of him.
The Rams won a Super Bowl. He won Super Bowl MVP and I think league MVP.
So, the question I have for you is
Sean Hill's that guy. I'm telling you, Sean. If the Rams
Jeff
are going to
Fisher
do
said
it,
so.
Sean Hill is that guy. And he has a similar career path to Kurt Warner. Now Warner was actually out of football. I'm not so sure Sean Hill ever was, but they both did play, I believe, in the Canadian Football League for the Amsterdam Admirals, I think it was, or something like that. So there's some history there. What do I honestly believe they're going to burst on the scene and go like 13-3 like that '99 team? Probably not, but I was hoping they could get to 10 or 11 wins and push the Seahawks for that division title. But obviously that took a big hit today. But I think the offense is there for them to succeed. They might be relying on Zach Stacy a little more, or even Isaiah Peed or Trey Mason, the rookie. Which now I'm wishing I had Zach Stacy in our fantasy league, but this is what happens in the NFL. So next guy up, that's what it's got to be. And this isn't just my middle school team or high school team or next man up. This is a job for these guys, so they have to carry themselves like a professional. I know people are already talking about the Rams. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? They're going to trade for Mark Sanchez. Are they going to sign Tim Tebow?
I hope they trade for Mark Sanchez. Please trade for Mark Sanchez. That
Sean
would be
Hill
fantastic.
is a seasoned veteron. I mean, he's not flashy. He is
Mark
what he
Sanchez
is.
is your man.
But what is Sanchez going to bring that Sean Hill can't?
Championship.
Butt fumbles?
You're right. I'm only saying honestly, that because I'd like the Eagles to get
who's out there that's better than Sean Hill that you can honestly, legally, easily acquire in a trade or in free agency? If he's out there as a free agent right now, there's a reason he's out there as a free agent.
Tim Tebow.
Exactly.
No.
So, I mean, and I've seen people say they might sign a veteran or trade for someone, but it's probably not for the starting job. It's because they don't want Austin Davis, I think a second or third year pro, to be their main backup for the whole year. You have to have a contingency plan. Are you ready to make that guy the number 2 and the emergency injury quarterback. And obviously they're not going to use rookie Garrett Gilbert from SMU. He's probably going to be a practice squad guy.
Right.
So they need a veteran, sure, but as the reserve. Sean Hill's the guy.
If I'm them, maybe you get on the phone with like Minnesota and see are they ready to hand it over to Teddy Bridgewater and try and make a play for Matt Castle, but it would be tough because Matt Castle may be the starter, and I'm not sure Minnesota's ready to give up their security for Teddy Bridgewater,
Right.
But
right, so
you never know. One of those veterans that may or may not make a roster here, team may try and trade them before they get cut.
You could try to get Castle or Ponder from Minnesota. I've seen people throw out Ryan Mallett from the Patriots.
Yeah, but you're going to have to pay a ransom to the Patriots.
Or Kirk Cousins. But both those teams, like you said, they like those guys. Right. Why get rid of them?
A quote today that I saw, and I'm not necessarily sure I agree with it, but a quote today, it might have been Naismith or one of those guys was saying, it was Joe Theismann, sorry. He was saying how Kirk Cousins is outplaying RG3 right now. Well, we've heard that for 2 years now. So
and obviously he hasn't done that much in live games, real games that mattered for the 2 coaching staff to do anything with him. So I think that's just an old crazy guy.
Right. But you have to think at some point, if you're the Redskins, and I'm not saying for the Rams right now, but at some point you've got to be like, don't we have to cash in on this? Like the Falcons did when they traded Matt Schaub to the Houston Texans. Like, everybody loves our backup. Everybody loves our backup. We see him practice every day. We know that he might be a starter, but, he's not this next answer that everybody else thinks he is. But we could trade him, for like a 3rd-round pick. Do we do it? You got to think at some point you would pull the trigger on that. Maybe they're not sold on RG3. I'm not trying to get stuff started, but you know what I mean.
He's my fantasy quarterback.
If you are sold on him, no, that's a bad example because he's been hurt so much. But it's just interesting, and NFL trades are so tricky because you don't see big names get traded a lot.
Right.
It's because there's non-guaranteed contracts. So if you don't like the guy's contract anymore, you just cut him.
Right. So I think that's it. I think that wraps up both the North preview. So now we're 3/4 of the way through our NFL previews. All that's left is
the important stuff.
The important divisions, the East Coast divisions, those big 8 teams. And we'll do our playoff predictions, Super Bowl 49 predictions. All that next week will come to an end. And then 2 weeks from now, guess what? We'll have the first weekend of pro football action. Next weekend we have, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, Friday night we got Friday Night Lights back, Wilson Mifflin. But then Saturday, hopefully, unless a volcano changes things, we have a Penn State UCF game Saturday morning in Ireland.
When is the team supposed to go to Ireland?
Well, the band's leaving Tuesday, as one of our close friends' sisters is on the blue band and is going to that. I believe the team leaves tomorrow. I know my aunt and uncle who are going to the game left today.
Okay. I know a lot of the tours left today, which is good because I always say, don't get me wrong, it would be a pain to be there and not be able to get home and with work and everything. If I'm going to be stuck somewhere, I want to be stuck on vacation, not waiting to go to vacation.
Right, yeah.
Just a general rule of thumb. It may not apply every time, and a volcano could definitely change the game there a little bit. It's not like the volcano's in Ireland.
Right, I know. It's just a little smoke.
Just ash breathing.
Just, look,
air
fly
quality.
like this. How hard is that? I'm sure there's nothing to do with gas. That can't be the issue. Come on.
The dinosaurs didn't mind, right?
Right, come on. I mean, seriously. It's just a little ash. So hopefully we have a Penn State game to talk about. Hopefully it's a Penn State win. They start off the season on the right feet.
Awesome.
I
picked it as a loss, which I feel bad about. But
remember, 7-5. 7-5.
Did you read Black Shoe Diaries predictions?
I did not.
The high end was 8-4.
That's where I was at.
Right.
I said I would love to see 9-3.
There were a few 6-6s in there.
I don't want that. I don't want
7-5 I can deal with.
If you get to 8-4, I think the recruiting class stays intact. If you go 6-6, I think you lose some guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's everything. Next week's show, again, I mentioned we're doing the East divisions and the
show
playoff
next week.
Super
Big
Bowl.
show
Huge
next
show.
week.
We'll talk about Wilson Mifflin. We'll talk about Penn State.
Yeah, hopefully there's a lot to talk about in those two topics too.
And do you have any shout-outs?
Ooh, my parents' wedding anniversary yesterday.
Yes.
34 years yesterday.
Very, very good. That's impressive. 34 years. My cousin is celebrating a birthday today, so happy birthday to Rick. And also coming up next weekend, my aunt is celebrating a birthday, so Aunt Diane, happy birthday a little early to her. And also, sticking with the Massachusetts Mays gang, Morgan Mays, little cousin, little second cousin, however that works out, she'll be celebrating a birthday as well. So big month in August for May's birthday. So I think that's it, though. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. I hate to do that. So, but that's it. Thanks for joining us. That wraps up the 146th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday evening at 6:30 for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.